It can't be overstated how important it is to be able to keep these pads clean and make it easy to keep these pads clean, because they're essentially just giant air filters. And if an air filter gets dirty, we starve the fans for air. If the fans are starved for air, we get less airspeed. We get less airspeed, we get less cooling. So being able to keep a pad clean using, especially in places with a lot of mineral buildup, or maybe even just a lot of dust and dirt in the air, being able to keep the pads clean easily is going to be able to result in farmers being able to keep their birds cooler during hot weather. And you see with these bigger holes, the bigger holes are less likely to clog because there's less surface area on that. The smaller the hole, the quicker it can clog up with feathers and dust and minerals. So again, that is an advantage of a plastic pad. The bigger holes, the ability to clean them, ensures that we're going to have maximum airflow through the pads, which means we're going to have maximum airflow down the house, and we're going to end up with being able to keep our birds cool on even the hottest days during the summertime. In our study of the plastic pads on this farm, the objective necessarily wasn't to do better than paper pads. The question really was, can they do as good of a job as paper pads? Because we've been happy with paper pads. They've been very successful. So the question is, can we have a pad that can put up with bad water quality that we can aggressively clean and be able to cool the same? And what we've seen with the plastic pad, with the right distribution system, with the right water flowing over it, that we can get just as good bird performance with a plastic pad as we do our paper pads. Which one cools more? They're both within probably a degree of one of another on a typical day. As with everything, there are advantages and disadvantages. So what's the disadvantage of a plastic pad? Well, first, right now, they're more expensive. And they might cost twice as much, but who knows what the price is going to happen in the next 5-10 years. But that is something to consider. But if you have pads that you're having to replace every 3-5 years just because of the water quality issues, then you could see, hey, it would be a very good investment. That would be well worth paying twice as much if the pads can last 2, maybe 3 times longer. The other disadvantage or potential weaknesses of a plastic pad is that they don't wick water like a paper pad does. If I don't put enough water on a paper pad, the water will wick throughout the entire pad and wet the entire pad. So if I have a clogged hole in my system or something like that, with a paper pad, if I have holes on each side that are working, they'll sort of come together, wick in the middle. The challenge with the plastic pad is that you don't really have that wicking ability like you do with the paper pad. So we need to make sure that we have a very good distribution system that's capable of putting about 0.75 gallons per minute per linear feet of system at a minimum. So this is a 55-foot system, so we need to have a pump that can do at least 40 gallons per minute. That will ensure not only that we can get the whole pad thoroughly wetted, because we need a lot of water to make sure we get every square inch of this pad wetted, but also it will help to keep that mineral buildup to a minimum by flushing water over the surface of the pad. Another potential issue that you need to be aware of with plastic pads is that with traditional paper pads, they're designed to put most of the water on the outside surface of the pads. We have a 45-15 degree flute angle. That encourages water to the outside surface, so when the air comes through the pad, it takes that extra water on the surface and moves it towards the inside surface. The challenge with plastic pads is they don't have unequal flute angles. So what happens is when we're pulling a lot of air through the pad, it pulls a lot of water to the inside surface. Now that means it's not a major problem, but that means the doghouse is more likely to get wet, because those big droplets tend to fall on the floor. So in a paper pad, the inside surface tends to be a little bit drier, plastic pad a little wetter. Again, is it a major issue? If you have a doghouse and a little space there, yep, the floor will get wet. Not a major issue, but if you don't have a doghouse and you have the pad right up against the house, you have to be very careful with a plastic pad, because that water could go right into the house. One of the things you have to realize is that a lot of the systems that work with paper pads might not work with a plastic pad. Because a paper pad can wick out easily with a minimal amount of water, you can just put half the amount of water on the pad and that water will wick out and you'll get the cooling. And if you take that same system and put a plastic pad on it that doesn't have that wicking ability, you're going to find out that you're going to tend to get a lot more areas of the pad that are dry. And as a result, you'll get less cooling off the plastic pad. So that's one of the things I think is utmost important. You just can't take any house and put a plastic pad in it. It might work, it might not work, but it depends to a large extent the quality of the water distribution system. Can the system put a lot of water on that pad without making a total wet mess of everything? So many times, even with our paper pads, people are cutting back water flow because the distribution system isn't designed to put a lot of water in the pad. And again, we get by with that with a paper pad. But with the plastic pad, we need something better. So that's my point. With the right system, run proper, with the right water flow over the pad, we can get essentially the same amount of cooling off of a plastic pad as we do a paper pad. But we have to be really careful when taking a plastic pad and putting it in a substandard water distribution system. If you're going to put in a plastic pad, you have to make sure, can I put that 0.75 gallons per minute on your typical 50-foot length system? We're talking, can you circulate 50 gallons per minute over the pad? Now keep in mind, only a tenth of that will evaporate. But we need that 50 gallons per minute, especially with a plastic pad, to make sure we get it thoroughly wetted. It will still work if you don't get it thoroughly wetted, but it will cool less than a paper pad.